All right, so thanks for that great introduction and welcome, of course, to our continuing coverage here on Food Tech 21. Before we get started on this topic, I want to just remind you, hit the Q&A button. That's how we're going to get great conversations going, and you're going to get a chance to kind of get some Q&A going right here on this very topic. So don't be afraid, jump right in there. Let's kind of jump to it. The session and topic for this one is medicine for operators and gold for investors. And I've got Jimmy Frischling, who is a partner and one of the founders at a company called Branded Strategic Hospitality. Great to have you on the session here, Jimmy.
Thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate being on with you.
Yeah, so branded is a very unique concept. When I first met you guys, I didn't understand what you guys did. Then I started really digging into it, and I'm like, oh, now I get it. This is interesting. I like it. For the operators that are viewing in today and our attendees, kind of talk to me about what Branded does and how you guys kind of work in the market.
Sure, and thank you very much. I will say it's not your fault that we came across as a little different than other platforms. I've heard that there's, and with no hubris, I've heard there's no one else like us in the market.
Yeah.
That either makes us really dumb or hopefully maybe a little smart. The jury's still out, but I'm going to lean on the intelligence side. But I would say that Branded, first and foremost, we've had a restaurant company for the last 25 years, and we continue to own and operate stores in New York City, and we've been doing that for, again, 2.5 decades. We have 22 stores still, and we'll recalibrate that in light of COVID as we go forward. But we've been doing this a long time, and I've been an investor and a partner in that restaurant company, and it's actually the managing partner of the restaurant group is my partner Michael Schatzberg, and we launched Branded Strategic a little less than 3 years ago for a myriad of reasons, but ultimately it was the realization that technology needed to be embraced by the hospitality industry in a way that it has not yet or had never been embraced before. And I've been in the financial and capital markets now for just over 30 years, and everything I was hearing from my restaurant partners and the operators signaled to me that this was truly an emerging and alternative asset class, where subject matter experts were needed. And with that in mind, we put our money where our mouth is. We launched this investment and advisory platform. There's an affiliation with Branded Restaurants, but it's a separate company. And we've been working very closely with early stage hospitality technology companies where we're willing to deploy our own capital, where we've been helping try to accelerate and become an ambassador as we test and vet and validate and try to help accelerate, again, some really great companies, and having a ton of fun doing it, but really feel it's now become a criticality. And as we said, as you said at the top of this segment, it's medicine now for medicine for operators. And we truly believe that the industry must embrace this, not as a nice to have, but as a must have. And that was kind of our overarching thesis of the importance of tech for the industry.
Well, I often say that, great ideas usually have great timing, and I think yours is definitely tuned into a perfect timing scenario, and we've chatted about this, about, who's net positive post-COVID, who's net negative, and, a lot of operators are trying to shake that out right now, and technology seems to be the #1 differentiator that either makes you a winner or makes you a loser. So if you're not ready, hopefully some operators today are going to get some great ideas. I want to kind of jump into the first topic, and that is kind of the biggest challenges that operators face today. Of course, you're dealing with a lot of startup technology companies who are trying to solve those solution and challenges, and you probably get a lot of behind the scenes stuff that maybe a lot of people don't get access to. What are you seeing out there in terms of the biggest challenges that operators are facing?
Sure. And again, in light of COVID, that's even changed, even just over the short period of months, as on-premise business has been truly slaughtered. You mentioned, businesses that'll be net positive from COVID or a net negative. Look, COVID's a disaster for so many reasons, and it's certainly been a sledgehammer to the brick and mortar hospitality business, and again, a number of others, transportation, hoteling. I mean, it's crippling and that's not even taking into account the death toll, which continues to climb. But the fact is, it did put a spotlight on our thesis, and I loved what we were doing, and I felt we were getting a lot done without COVID. But I think COVID has really crystallized the fact, if you're not embracing tech as a brand, as a restaurant company, as in the business of serving and selling food and beverage, I really think you're going to be challenged, and that's a very polite way of saying I think you're going to go away.
Yeah.
The industry is oversupplied. It's certainly saturated. That's been a wonderful thing for many consumers, but at the end of the day, it is a very is a saturated and fragmented market, and I believe the embracement of technology and smart technology and the deployment of tech is going to prove to be the differentiator between the winners and losers. You asked me what are operators looking at. Pre-COVID, we had a very simple approach to our investment thesis. It was, can a technology help us drive sales? Pretty straightforward. Can a technology help us reduce certain cost expenses and run a more efficient store? And then we looked at technology. Could it solve issues relating to compliance? And those are really the three categories. And then for us, it's really trying to identify, does the tech really address a critical issue? And while I have great restaurant partners, if somebody presents me with a tech that is bringing a solution to a problem that none of my managers or my fellow restaurant owners have ever raised to me, even and I think I know more than the average bear when it comes to operating restaurants and venues, but I don't profess to know as much as my operating partners. But if somebody presents me with a technology solution and I've yet to hear any of my restaurant partners tell me that that's keeping them up at night and that's an issue that needs to be addressed, my comment to the tech CEO or leadership team is, I think you've built a solution that's in search of a problem as opposed to a solution that's actually addressing a critical problem, challenge, or opportunity that's going to get a restaurateur's attention and help spend money and deploy the tech and hopefully become a customer of the tech company. So sales, expenses, and compliance are the three macro topics, and we can go as granular as you like on any of those.
Well, I'm kind of curious when you look at the kind of the shifting landscape, because right now we've got, and I've talked to so many operators in the last 6 months that literally 2 months ago they had a completely different business model than they do today. They seem to be very flexible and have kind of understood that the new landscape is my ability to change and adapt quickly is really my differentiator in the marketplace. And to do that, in many cases, technology is usually an implication of whether I can do it or not. Curbside, I'll just bring that one up as a good example.
Sure.
When curbside, it's been around for a long time, but there has never really been a lot of companies that have applied technology to it until recently, because now it's taking up 30-40% of your business plus your takeout and delivery. You're upwards of 70% of your business model. So when you look at that case, are you finding operators who are coming to technology companies and saying, listen, we're seeing new ways of operating so fast and so different than what we were just 6 months ago? We now have technology needs that are ramping up beyond the scalability of what the tech companies are actually doing. In other words, do we have the food service industry finally pushing the tech guys instead of the other way around?
Sure, it's a great question. I guess I'll highlight one kind of I think a concept or a part of the market that I think everyone has experience with, and we can talk about it then and now. America has been the slowest country to embrace pay at the table. And if you've traveled at all, you know that throughout Europe, throughout Asia, throughout Latin America, up in Canada, pay at the table was relatively common. And yet it probably existed in not 10%, less than 10% of restaurants in the United States. And yet even the regulations 3 years ago had pushed both retail and hospitality to embrace pay at the table. Retail did very well. I mean, I'm sure everyone who's listening to us, watching us, knows about slipping their chip into a device across a counter in a retail type environment. And yet in restaurants, it was the credit card was still leaving your hand, going to some fake leather envelope and disappearing somewhere in the venue, despite the fact regulations said otherwise. If you go to today, and I think COVID in this regard didn't necessarily change anything as much as it accelerated things. Pay at the table
Right.
has already been leapfrogged. That's now that's passe. That's antiquated. We now want the BYOD, the bring your own device, and by that I mean is your device has to allow you to do your ordering, leveraging a QR code, do the payments, leveraging your virtual or your wallet, your e-wallet. And to your comment about curbside, the technology is very much there. Branded had partnered, invested, and was promoting a BYOD company pre-COVID for on-premise experiences, and
Right.
watching our consumers like it. And this technology easily rolled into the curbside, type of needs of the current environment. What I would say is
Yeah.
off-premise business pre-COVID, I'd say 90+% delivery, less 10 or less takeout. Today,
Yeah.
50-50. As now the
Yeah.
consumer says, you know what, I'll go get my food. And that is,
Hmm.
I think, here to stay. And to your point, the technology is not only keeping pace with that criticality and the move of the venues and the consumer, but actually the technology is very ready. And I still think the industry is slow to adopt it. But the tech is there to run that business or that segment of your business far more efficiently and effectively than even the operators or most operators are still utilizing.
Yeah. All right, Jimmy. So getting back to medicine for operators, when you look at kind of where the market has gone, especially around third-party delivery and its explosion, I guess the question is, does or do operators kind of look at where their channels are now in terms of takeout, third-party delivery, et cetera? Is it time for them to pull the plug and actually look at maybe doing their own delivery logistics? What do you think about that?
It's I don't believe it's universally embraced, although it should be. But certainly the opportunity and the momentum to embrace tech and some of the things you mentioned has never been stronger than in the 20 plus years that I've been in this business. I guess the way I would look at it is, and not to be controversial, but I'm not afraid to be. If you're a restaurant owner and you're not embracing the best in class tools that are at your disposal, or if you've relied on a GM or any member of your team to lead your move into tech, if you're not embracing the tools that are readily available to you, you're being effing lazy. And you're going to go out of business. And anyone who's taking a step back and saying my old way of doing it will come back, hospitality, we greet our guests and yada yada yada. If you're going to rely on the old way of doing things, I'm not saying there isn't a place for an old school restaurant to operate in its neighborhood. I'm not saying there won't be. There'll be plenty of them, but there'll be fewer, and I dare say at least 25% less. And that is a fairly conservative number. It could be worse because the technology that is there, if you're not embracing it, you mentioned third party delivery, that was revolutionary. That was one of the companies that my restaurant group embraced 22 years ago, back when it was called Seamless Web, and it was an accounting solution to large investment banks and law firms that had to address late night meals for its employees that were working into the evening. And it was an accounting solution. They charged us 5%. And without picking on our friends in the DSP business, they no longer charge 5%. So, but that was the best solution in a market that delivery was really relegated to, respectively, pizza and Chinese and maybe a deli. Now it's everything. Now it's everywhere. Everyone's got to deliver. So if you're a restaurant that's not delivering, you've made a mistake, and thankfully I think many from COVID quickly raced and got their platforms online. But now to your point about the native delivery or the white label delivery platforms, in my opinion, there are tools that allow you to win that customer back. There are tools to help you do the takeout. By the way, the biggest two issues that bother the consumer, the customers from delivery, it's the food safety issue, it is the temperature issue. Second biggest complaint, food comes cold. There's tech to solve both of those issues. And I'd say the third one is about to be the price, because someone's got to pay the freight of getting that food from the store to your door. And for the last bunch of years, that's been funded from VC and private equity money, and it's been funded off the backs of restaurants. And restaurants no longer want to pay that 20, 30%, about 20% if you're not doing the last mile, 30% if you're doing that last mile, meaning getting it from, again, the restaurant to your door. That fee's got to be spread out. And now the consumer's finding out, wait a second, that delivery charge costs as much as my burrito. So these native and white label solutions and these takeout solutions, I think, are really going to catch on, and that represents best in class, in our opinion.
All right, so I completely get that, Jimmy. All right, so let's kind of move to the technology and the solutions. When you look at the landscape, both on the companies that are out there coming up with these great ideas, and then also the solutions themselves, the technology, how do you guys, as an investment company, work with those companies? How do you kind of go about the process of selecting them or getting into into the game with them?
Sure, and thank you. One of our key working assumptions or even recognitions is that the millennials, and for avoidance of doubt, there'll not be one bit of bashing from me towards the millennials for a number of reasons, which, and probably the most important is they represent the single largest percentage of the consumer market today. They dine a little differently than my father dines, and they probably even dine a little differently than I dine. And I think a lot of the things we look at have to give them and others the type of experiences in terms of interaction and relationship with the venues that they really are looking for. So I mentioned at the top of the segment, we talked about driving sales and cutting costs. The first technology company we invested in, and this was after using it for a number of months to really validate and vet what the value add would be, and it's a company. The official name is Innovative Tap Solutions, but it does business as Pour My Beer and Pour My Beverage. It's a self-pouring beverage solution or beverage system. It allows you to leverage using a QR code. It allows you to basically grab your own glass, access it to activate the tap, pour the beverage of your choice, pour as much or as little as you want, try and taste different things. And what we found, not only were people consuming more beverages, and that was great that we're selling more. We also saved money on waste, or admittedly on some theft, or on giveaways. But it created almost an experience that even if you're sitting at a table, and even if you had a waiter or waitress, you still wanted access to that wall because it was social, it was fun, you got to taste different things, you didn't have to commit to a whole pint of something. So we found that to be checking the box of it helped us drive sales, and it also helped us manage our costs by reducing some element of labor because we needed one less bartender and fewer servers, given the number of people that wanted to serve themselves. Think about, without that system, it probably takes at least two people in a restaurant to get you a Coca-Cola or a pint of beer or a glass of wine. Who takes your order, put it in the POS, bartender pours it, somebody runs it back to your table. That is that was we thought, very inefficient, given there was a technology that could so accurately measure and integrate into our POS and to deliver an experience that you actually wanted, which was to take care of yourself. So that was our first. That really launched the investment platform, and we continue to think this is a very strong company, and you're going to start to see it as normal. You'll walk into a place and say, oh, it's one of these self-pour beverage establishments, or you'll see it in arenas or stadiums and restaurants and hotels, airports. We're very excited about what this company's going to do.
All right, understood. So you talk about this investment class as being misunderstood, meaning restaurant hospitality and also restaurant technology. Kind of explain what you mean by that.
Sure, and I appreciate the question. Not to attempt to be funny, but I believe it's such a unique and exciting emerging and alternative asset class, and because it's misunderstood. But the reason why it's so severely misunderstood is because everyone thinks they understand it. And while I just did a tongue twister there, let me try to explain. I've never seen an asset class or an industry where the consumer feels such a sense of understanding of the business itself, because you know how to make grill a burger. You're a chef, and you become very opinionated on the way in which I use the silly example or simple example of a burger, but essentially you could feed yourself. So when you walk into an establishment, You are letting them take care of you, but it's something you know you could do yourself, even though you probably couldn't do 200 or 400 covers in a span of a couple hours. The fact that you could take care of yourself leads you to believe you understand it. The fact that you know how to make a reservation online using OpenTable or otherwise. The fact that you know how to order delivery, and whether you use a Grub or a DoorDash or an Uber Eats, you know how to do deliveries. You understand the delivery market. I really believe, like no other asset class I've seen, the confidence from the consumer to feel they're comfortable and understanding of this asset class has led to it being such an amazing alternative and investable asset class from our perspective. Because the fact is, just because you're a good customer doesn't mean you actually know how these venues operate and the technology that's needed. And that misunderstanding actually plays a role from the technologists and the people that are creating these solutions or investing in these companies, that they hear a great story and they're like, oh my God, this is going to solve so many problems. But you know who they didn't speak to? They didn't speak to anyone who worked in a restaurant. And that's going back to my early point about how many technology companies we've come across that have raised money, spent money, and they come to us with this golden solution until I watch my partners say, but that's not how the restaurant works. Or but that's not actually a problem I have. And that's that aha moment of where I feel branded plays such a important role. So to that effect, the misunderstanding is people's maybe false sense of confidence in the asset class. And what we try to do is really work with technology companies that either have figured out what is the most pressing issue or are willing to work with us closely to make sure that product roadmap is very tied into the actual way these stores and these businesses do in fact operate. So that's really kind of our secret sauce, is the ability to vet these companies as a practitioner and as a user first and foremost, and then we move on into the investment thesis.
All right, so Jimmy, when you look at kind of where investment has been occurring in the industry for quite some time, fast casual has been one of those categories that we've seen a lot of VCs, private equity, family offices, et cetera, that have really kind of invested in that. Now that's somewhat at risk right now with the current situation. It feels like the tables have turned a little bit to where hospitality and restaurant technology companies are actually at an advantage now, where investment might be really strong for these because this is a great product now that can help restaurants kind of come out of this. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think around that?
Yeah, to me, if I were to give a kind of a macro comment, I'd say the technology companies that really represent the brand, we call those hospitality-centric companies. They're on the side of the owners and operators, and they want to promote the brand. Because we think the consumer now is going to get really sophisticated, because they're going to have the tools to essentially know what they want, and they're going to engage in restaurant groups similar to hotels or otherwise, but they're going to engage in a manner that is going to be, if you're trying to disintermediate the relationship between the brand and the brand's customers, that is a to us is a red flag, wolf in sheep's clothing, however you want to look at it, and we stay away from those. In a number of businesses I've looked at and been part of, we think content wins. Okay, in the airline business, the intermediaries got involved selling discount tickets till the airline said, you know what, we'll set up our own websites and we'll have our own marketplace. Ticket brokers, ticket scalpers, at the end of the day, the league said, we'll have our own. A ticket exchange. Why are we letting people make money between the relationship between my game and my fans? Music even got disintermediated. They fought back, and content wins. Watch out for cable. They're gonna, if they think the money's gonna be between the content and the customer, watch how these content folks win. I think restaurants are in a similar space. I think the consumer wants our stuff, and companies that market and connect our brands with the consumers, I think, are going to win out. In the delivery space, I'll even give the name. We believe in the native platform, the white label. We invested and partnered with a company called GoParrot. We think the way they work as a SaaS fee on the delivery side, and basically giving us the same type of user interface that you'd expect from the biggest DSPs, delivery service platforms. We think they give the customer that experience. Plus, they are out there marketing our brands and doing things with our customers and for our customers with digital marketing and loyalty. These are things that we feel differentiate and help our stores do better, because we've not only partnered with a very good native and white label delivery, digital marketing, and loyalty platform. But as an investor, that's a company we got behind. So there's an example. And there are other companies again that are really promoting the brand.
All right, so Jimmy, as you look out into, kind of the whole industry right now, and you look at some of the emerging technology companies that are starting to shake out and the way that some of the brands and restaurant concepts are using them, I'm kind of curious, what do you think, or what have you seen in terms of new technologies that are going to shake out over the next 5 years that will really make a difference with restaurants in the future? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the companies that we are now really working with and looking at, and we think is going to play a big role. And by the way, it's not just for the hospitality business, because nothing's more important, or I should say, the labor cost and human capital is a very big part of hospitality, and you cannot remove the human capital. You can tweak it, you can bring efficiencies, but at the end of the day, our consumers, our customers want to deal with our people. So our staff is critically important. We're starting to work with a company called Clocked In, which is focused uniquely on retention and hiring in the employment space. And I ordered those correctly. For a lot of fast food giants and quick serve giants, their turnover is 100%. And that is very costly to their business. So this is a technology company that actually promotes retention, because it creates almost a LinkedIn-like social platform community that allows workers to get more hours. It allows the managers to help them get more shifts. If you're trained and you can operate in a Wendy's environment at the cashier or the fry cook, they can get you more shift at other Wendy's. Or maybe a Kentucky Fried Chicken will say, that's a skill set we need. And this is a company that I think, when a lot of people are trying to remove the labor, and we understand why that is, this is a company that's recognizing that labor is a big part of it, and we've got to promote people doing better in this industry by getting them more hours and more shifts and showing them a career path, or at least a way to earn a very good living. And I think Clocked In uniquely does that like no company I've seen before.
All right, Jimmy, so it's been great having you on the FoodTech21 session here today. Jimmy Frischling with Branded Strategic Hospitality. And of course, all of you watching, listening in right now, make sure and hit the Q&A button, because that's kind of how we're getting feedback from our audience right here live during FoodTech21. Make sure and stay tuned right here for more great content. We'll catch you in a bit.